Hi all, welcome to another little tip of the day. I'm making a jacket. I'm sure some of you have seen this jacket. I'm actually making this jacket for a customer, and these are big window, what they call window pane checks, very big checks. Now when you're going to match up checks, you need to match them up everywhere on your sleeve. So this is a sleeve I'm making, so you've got to cut it exactly so everything will match up. So you've got to align all the checks on the inside, the hind arm and the forearm, we call that in the trade. So you've got to match up on the everywhere. Now, I base mine in. Some people pin, but pins move, so always try and baste your checks in if you're going to be doing checks. Now, I've got a different kind of machine, which is called a needle feed machine. So it kind of operates differently. From probably most of your machines. Most people have a lock stitch machine. So the lock stitch machine, it pulls the bottom layer through. So you have to compensate for that pulling of that bottom layer through the feed dog. So what you usually do on the bottom layer, because the bottom layer is pulled through, so you'd actually offset the check fractionally. So when it's pulled through, it will compensate and they'll be together. So just always bear that in mind. Or if you look at some of my videos on handling fabrics, you can get your fabric and just be taut. So just have some tension behind and in front. And then just as you're sewing it through, just keep it behind the presser foot a little bit taut. I call it taut, but just a little bit of tension, but don't go crazy. Just a little bit of tension front and behind, and that should keep both fabrics stable when you're stitching it. So always bear that in mind. But when you're going to match up your checks, I always backstitch on each big check. These are the window pane checks, just to give it a little bit more stability. A lot of tailors don't, but everyone's got their own method. I'm just showing you my method. Now it's important when you're basting it down, I've just chalk marked in where I'm going to be stitching it, so 1 centimetre seam. So just try and come just past. You don't want to be catching the machine stitches in your basting stitches. It's a nightmare to get out. So just baste it just on the outside of that where you're going to stitch it, so it doesn't, just ensures you will not catch in your machine. So as you go up, just make sure it's all aligned, because the way machines work, as I said, on lock stitch machines, they drag the bottom layer through. The feed dog will pull the bottom layer through, so you may have to offset it fractionally to compensate. But I don't do that method, but sometimes we'll offset it, the bottom check, so it compensates when it pulls it through, it matches up exactly. But I'm going to show you this little method which I do, which is pretty good. So just baste it. Now when you come up to your check, because you'll have all these different plaids and checks and whatever in various widths. So when I come up to my check here, just make sure that where my seam is going to be, it's exactly aligned. And what I do, when I come up here now, I backstitch it. So I'll do a normal basting past it, and then I'll backstitch it. So basically it's like a double stitch. It just gives it more stability, because when the machine, it will pull it, so it just gives it, just make sure. But also when you're stitching, as you're stitching down, just open it up and just make sure that's aligned. So you make sure that is going to be aligned, and double check as well after you basted it, that will be aligned. Can you see that? That's just fractionally out there here. So I'm just going to undo this and just rebaste that a little. So just always be careful. So the bottom here, so just baste it, and as you come to each check, backstitch it, and then just do your normal basting. When you come up to the next lot of check, backstitch it. So it kind of it's like a double thread. It will help stop it from moving. It will move fractionally because the fabric's malleable, but it will just help you try and match up the checks when it's being machined. So to always check. So after you baste it, see, check, and that's perfectly aligned as well. So I know that's aligned. I've backstitched this, but remember, just baste it on the outside of the seam where you're going to stitch it. So, and as you're machining it, open it up. So as you're coming down the machine, just open it, just make sure it's aligned as well. So as you're coming past it. So hopefully that's helped you. So there we go. Another little tip, if you are making a dress or a jacket with sleeves in, you can do it this way. There's one tailor I was observing and I watched his method, and I do like his method, because it is a bit difficult when you're making jackets to actually get the checks matching. So now the sleeve checks. The sleeve, the way it's cut out, you've got to match exactly on the checks. Really important. It's one of the most important parts when you're actually matching checks. Now, I've seen this tailor do it. Get some cheap fabric. So now I've actually cut out some cheap cotton. You can get it 50p a metre or whatever. And I'm going to actually put this into the jacket. And once it's in and it's pitched right, I'll talk about pitch on another tutorial. Once it's pitched in right and it fits the customer, so that'll be on the right side. I'm just going to get it to the other side. So once the sleeve's in and it's hanging good on a customer, all you have to do is just transfer the mark. When this sleeve is in, just transfer by chalk where it actually sits on the check. So you can actually just do a couple, and that will be, when you're going to cut your sleeve out, that will be your guide to cutting your checks out. And that's an easy way of matching up all your checks on a sleeve. So you can do it that way as well. Most tailors will they'll actually cut accordingly, and they'll match the sleeve, but this is a very simple way. So once the sleeve's on the customer, plain, don't forget it's got to be plain, then you just mark where your actual checks are on the front and wherever, and you're good to go. Now I'm going to be doing a tutorial how to make a sleeve. So I've just drafted the sleeve here. I've drafted a 2-piece sleeve from a 1-piece sleeve. So I'm going to show you how to draft a 1-piece sleeve, and I'm going to show you how to adapt it into a 2-piece sleeve. So that'll be on one of my new tutorials coming up very, very soon. So on that note, everyone, I'll say ciao for now, and I'll see you very shortly.